when the pandemic first began to impact what you do in terms of communication, and then let's move from there, from initial impact to evolution.
I think the second week of March-ish, we started to have an inkling that we would have to close before we actually closed. And I think ultimately, within about a week, we went from thinking that we'd have a week or so to figure this out to realizing that it was actually that Sunday that we were going to be closed. We sort of scrambled to get a live stream together that first week with virtually no equipment. I streamed the first week from my phone. And since then, we've gradually, because our building is really old, made some pretty significant technological upgrades in terms of both internet connectivity, which is a real issue for our building because the wires are old. All the cables for our connections were laid a long time ago. And that means that live streaming can be really tricky. So we've made some upgrades there, and we're still in the process of doing some more. Up until now, we have ended up using a camcorder for the actual service streaming that's sort of set up in the first or second pew. And we borrowed some mics for the first couple of weeks. We purchased mics after that and have been working to integrate these new microphones into our existing audio infrastructure. We had a sort of halfway measure of running them into a separate soundboard, and now have been able to have our audio engineers the people that set up our existing speaker system to sort of integrate them. Still have some kinks, but that's happening. And we have now an installed set of multiple cameras with multiple angles that we've been able to use so far for pre-recorded services, couple evensongs, and the Easter Vigil. This is stuff that we've been talking about doing, maybe some summer for a while. And we were hoping, I think, to start to really work on that this summer, but it ended up happening instead of, with some sort of like 6 to 8 month timeline into a 6 to 8 week timeline while we're actually doing it. Huge props to the sextons in particular, who've really just done amazing work. And Katie, who's worked with our IT person, Becky. Where we're looking to go is multi-streaming. So as soon as we get all these new pieces of hardware integrated, right now we're only able to stream to Facebook because we have, there's so many variables that every time we change one thing, this whole new set of kinks needs to get worked out. So as soon as we've got all these kinks worked out and we're able to use the new audio and video systems, we're investing in a multi-streaming platform that we've already tested successfully, and we'll be streaming simultaneously to Facebook and YouTube. I know there are some barriers to entry with Facebook, so we'd really like to get that going as soon as we can. But that's the next step. So within a month or so, I'm hoping to see that.
In the case of Trinity, it sounds like there was already, through pre-planning and through some training, things in place that you could operationalize much faster than you had planned to, but still could do it and were successful at it. But how much particularly in the beginning, was really you were just sort of doing it on the fly? You're like, okay, we have a need, we've got to respond, let's go.
I would say most of it was on the fly. We had plans in place for some of these things, but they were never something that we were expecting to do before Easter 2020. And I think that it's a testament to the staff in every situation, but this is no exception, that it is an exceptionally flexible staff and exceptionally capable. So I think the fact that it was on the fly didn't necessarily hurt us. It did stress us out and give us a couple of 60-hour work weeks for, 6 or 7 of us. But I think that we really rose to the occasion well. And there's not a lot I would have changed about those first few weeks, except maybe being so worried about it being perfect. I think we don't like it when things don't look good. We don't like it when things don't sound good. And to a certain extent, there's just nothing you can do about that until you can make some upgrades. So being a little more patient with ourselves, I think at the beginning might have been a good plan. And it was generally not with our colleagues, it was with ourselves. So being a little nicer to ourselves might have been good. Things. Like I mentioned, live streaming is something that I think every cathedral should be doing for access, mostly because we don't know how many of our parishioners don't come because they can't. don't come because they've moved away, don't come because, they don't have the option for one reason or another, who would watch a live stream regularly. And I think this has been the opportunity to see that it's actually a pretty significant population. I think some of the diocesan people that we're getting, we wouldn't, have in a live service,
Right.
but they might want to connect with it afterwards. But there are plenty of people who have moved and are no longer to be a physical part of this community who will absolutely, I think, continue to engage in that way. And then homebound people, there's all
Right.
sorts of reasons that people can't come to church. So the live streams for sure, I expect we'll be holding on to. And I would love to have some sort of digital content on YouTube, for example, on a regular basis, because of the sort of lurkers out there
Mm-hmm.
who, for many reasons, may not feel comfortable coming into a church building, but may feel comfortable engaging in a different way.
Right.
And that may never translate into sort of financial commitment to the cathedral, but I think that those people are still very much a part of,
Mm-hmm.
or could be a part of this community in that way, whether or not we ever hear from them. I think that those people are out there, and it's important that we reach them.
So there's definitely a conscious sort of evangelism aspect that really is focused just on the spiritual well-being of people without, as you just said, necessarily ever going to capture them financially. Anything you would like me to know about all of this that we haven't touched on?
I do want to reiterate that I think that everything that we've had to do are things that are important for us to be able to do anyway. I think that the role of a cathedral in the 21st century is to be accessible to as many people in as many ways as possible, because it's an increasingly secularized country, but that doesn't mean that people don't have spiritual needs. And I think the fact that we don't see somebody in the cathedral in the pews doesn't mean that they don't want to connect with us in one way or another. For some people, it's coming and volunteering, and for some people, it's listening to the music and never thinking about the God stuff. And it can look so many ways. So I think that these things are important for us to be able to do, and I'm glad that we are now more able to do them.